Morning everyone, and welcome to another creative coffee break with myself, Dwynwen from Loch, Ness Knitting. Today we're joined by Netty, who is a maker based in the Outer Hebrides. Netty, why don't you tell us a little bit more about where you are and what you do?
Hello, so I'm Netty, as introduced, and I'm based in Ness in the Outer Hebrides, which is right up in the north of the island. I've lived here for about 14, nearly 15 years now, and I moved up to take up a kilt making apprenticeship in the local town of Stornoway. And then from that, after starting a family, set up my own business where I hand tailor kilts, but I specialise in using Harris tweed, which is woven locally, making contemporary kilts and garments. And I also lecture at the local college in fashion design.
That sounds fascinating. Have you got anything you can show us?
I've got a collection of things. So I've got probably one of the most exciting projects for me that I've been working on for the past few years is developing yarn, weaving yarn. So I'm going to hold that up. And if I zoom that in into, where am I going? Weaving yarn from our own flock of sheep, own flock of Hebridean sheep.
Oh.
So this is from Hebridean sheep, so the little brown sheep with the horns. We developed a flock. We got a flock about 3-4 years ago, and then we've grown it to the extent that we can have enough wool to be processed into our own yarn in a local spinning mill down in Uist. And then from that, I then work with local weavers, and they've woven it into Harris tweed. So at the moment, I've got 3 or 4 bolts of our own cloth on my studio table, and it's up to me now to design things to make it into. So I'm at a kind of a really interesting point to kind of tread water and think stuff through as to how I'm going to do that. But the kilts that I make, and this is one which I did, you can't see the whole thing, but this is one that I worked on with Uist wool again and a local weaver. So this, the yarn and the wool that was used to make this is all waste wool. So any wool during the spinning process and the carding process at Uist wool, they put into 2 bags of colourways, a light dark and a dark grey, basically, and they then blended them together. So we've got 2 colour yarns, and then Becca, then who's a weaver I work with, she then wove it up into a cloth, and then I designed a range of projects that basically were focused around zero waste pattern cutting techniques, and that was with Zero Waste Scotland. So that was quite a few years ago, and before we had our own wool kind of in development. But that's basically, I guess in a nutshell, is where my work is really focused. Is kind of it's very niche, it's very small, but it's very much about trying to use what materials are around me. Obviously, from the sense of living on an island, you don't have a huge selection of fabrics that you can go and choose from and work with, but you can actually get a huge amount from just sitting still and looking and going, what is there, what can I use? There's also a pendant which I now use as my logo, which when I was doing the Zero Waste project, I went to a fabricator in Stornoway and said, look, I need to get some buttons manufactured, but I'm trying to do everything from waste and I'm trying to do it on the island. So they basically gave me access to their scrap pile of metal, and they used their water cutter. So I drew the button logo and they cut it there, and then, which is just a really satisfying conclusion to the project, because it's like, excellent, I've not had to send off for buttons or any fastenings. I can just, everything was manufactured here, which is great. So,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Being where you are in the Outer Hebrides, it's a rural, quieter part of the world. You don't have the busy cosmopolitan stimulus. And so what kind of things do you have there that inspire you?
I think it is being here and the space and the lifestyle, very much so. But the inspiration, you still, because of the digital access you have, it doesn't feel like you're isolated. Or to me, it never has. I've never had that sense of living here and feeling as if I'm cut off from the rest of the world. And I think because it's a very transient place, there's so many people that travel through, either coming to visit or have permanent links here and come and stay, that it's not, you don't feel like you're not part of a bigger picture of things. It's almost the best of both worlds, because you do have that rural space to live and to work and create and have that all around you, in a lifestyle sense, and how you then want to spend your free time. But you also have a huge amount of people that are involved in many, many, many different things that you would be really surprised at, that either work from home because they can, or that use this place as somewhere to come to kind of reflect and think, and they're all part of the structure. So yeah. Did that answer that?
Yeah, it sounds
Okay,
like
cool.
you have a lovely creative community around you still, even though you are in one of the more isolated parts of the UK. So one of the things I'm wondering at the moment with all of the people that we're meeting on our creative coffee breaks is how we would get to try a little bit of what you do. So if we wanted to have a go at your practice, what kind of things would we need to get started, and where might we get those from?
Okay, so I would suggest the most satisfying thing, and when I've done kilt classes before, I've done them evening classes in the local arts centre, and the thing that people, so my cat's about to join us, the most interesting and exciting, there you go, this is Daisy.
Hello, Daisy.
Yes. The thing that people seem to enjoy the most is to actually do the hand sewing. So using these, and it's about learning how to use a thimble properly and the different sewing techniques. And to begin with, especially if I'm kind of like doing a kilt class, it's very hard if people, even if they've done a lot of sewing before, they can't necessarily think through the stages as to where it's going to go next, because there's so many different just sequences that you generally have to be shown something like kilts, because there's little techniques of folding cloth that, try as you might, if you try to write it down and explain it to someone, it doesn't make sense. But as soon as somebody shows you and you fold it and you go like this, different apron techniques, and people go, okay, well, that makes sense. But I think what people enjoy about it is that they don't know where it's going, and then it does make sense. And by the end, they're like, I've got a kilt. This is amazing. So I think the first thing from that perspective is actually getting a thimble and doing hand sewing. And that that's, and whether that's in the form of embroidery, or whether that's in the form of actually just having a go at sewing down things, because everything on these is hand sewn. So if you look at the pleats there, just trying to bring it up. Okay, so the pleats that are sewn into that, they're all hand sewn down, because in doing that, you can then layer the fabric in a way that the pleats hang, and you've got the fullness of the swing in a kilt. You can machine kilts, absolutely, and that's how they're, when you see the cheaper ones that are on sale in shops, that's how they're produced. But the satisfaction from the making, and when people have taken part, is actually doing the hand sewing. And when if you've got anything from like 21 to 29 pleats in a kilt, and if you're hand sewing those stage by stage, you have to baste one down, stitch it, baste it down, and boom, boom. It's a very kind of methodical rhythm to it that you can put on I always put on like a drama from Radio 4 or a podcast or something, and I sit and I just sew, and it's just really, I love it. I would far rather sit and hand sew than I would machine, because machining, it's great and it has every benefit to it, but it's not a relaxing process sometimes, especially when it goes wrong.
You're really selling it to me, actually.
Yes. Everybody should be hand stitching kilts. It is just, I think it's just it's a beautiful thing for somebody to be able to make someone. And when people start, or when you learn, you learn doing it on a child-sized kilt for obvious reasons, because you're not then wasting huge amounts of cloth if it goes wrong. You've not got the physical aspect of kind of handling 7.5 meters of cloth, which is effectively what a full kilt is. So if you've got a child-sized kilt and small pleats, it's nice. But it's also that, I think it's like it's a generational thing, that if you've made something for either a grandchild or your child, and you're then giving it to them, it's just a really beautiful thing. That's kind of the general sense of the kilt classes I've done in the past for ladies. Generally ladies, I mean a couple of men too, but that have sat, and it's either been for their grandchildren or for their children that they've been doing it, and there's just a really nice sense of satisfaction, kind of like they just enjoy it. It's a skill, and they just love the fact that they can do it and give it to them, and it's something that gets kept. So yeah, that's the key.
And what I love about your work and the piece that you've shown us is how you have worked with a very traditional garment like a kilt in Scotland, where we are, people are very familiar with, and there is a precise technique and a process of making these things, but you can still put your own twist and a modern spin on things in either the materials you choose or the combination of textiles in there. So if that has inspired other people and they'd like to see more of your work and find out more about that, have you got some contact details where people could find out more about you?
I have. I'm going to hold it up to the camera and just... is that working? There you go.
So Diggory Brown.
Yeah, Diggory Brown. There's a website and it's got images of the kilts all styled and looking beautiful. But I'm also on Instagram as well, at Diggory Brown, because it's when you were saying about living here, you are very aware most of the time that you're in a very different place, and capturing what's going on around, and lifestyle and shots of beaches. Which is where I have my coffee break. It's the Hebridean Tourist Board as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us for our creative coffee break this morning.
Okay, thank you. Enjoyed it.
Oh, you're very welcome. And for the people watching, if they'd like to check out some more of our creative coffee breaks with other Scottish makers, we've got weavers, we've got ceramic artists, we've got a whole range of people joining us for creative coffee breaks, and we'll be posting them all this week. Thank you.
Thank you.